Hello, I'm Mallika Shekhar, a haematologist in London, UK. Welcome to my podcast series called The Bitter Pill that looks at lessons that we may learn from history. Over the course of 7 episodes, we're going to take a look back at the early days of HIV/AIDS epidemic, when haematologists faced impossible choices around using blood transfusion treatments. I was a trainee when these events took place. 2 sets of memories stand out clearly in my mind from this time. There was a man with haemophilia who was wheeled into my hospital's casualty in southern India, critically ill. I came to know him well over the months. A stocky man with dark oiled hair and a pleasant manner, he was a regular. Every few months, he was wheeled in a state of collapse and shock, with major bleeding into his pelvis. We treated him with plasma and cryoprecipitate. Sometimes we emptied the blood bank stock to treat him. The left pelvis, that was his weak spot. He had bled so often that his pelvis was stiff with scars. He was unable to stand or walk. The following year, in 1987, I came to England to continue my training in London. I saw haemophilia patients die with AIDS and boys with haemophilia playing football. Haemophilia is a group of diseases where people are born with defects in their clotting system. They are inherited conditions, and the patients, who are usually boys and men, require lifelong treatment with blood plasma to prevent severe bleeding. In UK and other countries that could afford it, they were treated with factor concentrates. These were made by pooling many thousands of plasma donations, and that transformed the lives of people with haemophilia through the 1970s. But things changed in the 1980s. It was 1982 when AIDS was first described. The ones that got it were the 4 H's: Haitians, homosexuals, haemophilia patients, and heroin users. The haemophilia patients were the odd man out, and their doctors were puzzled but not alarmed. But not for long. They saw their patients develop AIDS and die of it. They then realized the common thread. The 4 H's were linked by blood. Donors of blood, recipients of blood. In that split second that lasted 4 years, those doctors had to decide what to do. They made choices for their patients. They examined data to make their minds up. And then they had to pick up the pieces. Many haemophilia patients died of AIDS and hepatitis C transmitted through blood transfusion. The period between 82 and 85 is critical in medical history because of the suffering and the death of so many people brought on by medical treatment. This period was characterized by prolonged uncertainty about the nature of AIDS and how society responded to it. These events have been described as a crisis, a scandal, a tragedy. In this podcast series, I've focused on haemophilia doctors and explored their responses as clinicians during this period. It's the stuff of nightmares, was how Justice Lord Penrose described the predicament of these haemophilia doctors. His report, the Penrose Inquiry Report, was burnt on the streets of Edinburgh when it was released in 2015. For those 4 years, between 82 and 85, as the evidence evolved, the haemophilia doctors had to contend with likelihoods and possibilities. This is the story of how the doctors thought and acted then, how they think and feel about it now. This is their story, told to you in their words and in their voices, as a series of 7 podcasts. They may be heard in any order as they connect with each other as a web. There are 4 thematic topics. Testing times deals with how they dealt with HIV tests and results. Decision time deals with how they considered their treatment decisions. Shared care deals with how professionals interacted with patients and amongst themselves. Uncertainty and the Fallout deals with the doctor's predicaments and their emotions. Then there are 3 biographic episodes. These paint portraits of events in France, in Amsterdam, and in Italy. The narratives offer many points of view, and they are interspersed with my commentary. A basic knowledge about haemophilia, its treatment, and blood plasma will help you appreciate the technical aspects of these podcasts. A standard web search would give you this quite easily. This project is approved by University College London's Ethics Committee and sponsored by the Royal Free Hospital charity. It's aimed at medical students and healthcare professionals as a basis for reflective learning and as a basis for discussions. But I hope members of the public will find it accessible and useful. I've used 2 sources of audio material to make these podcasts. One source is my interviews with haemophilia doctors of the 1980s from Europe, Australia, and Canada. I did these interviews in person or through the telephone in 2019. The second source is the YouTube recordings of the current UK infected blood inquiry. I've sat through much of this when we were allowed to, pre-COVID. 40 years on, it remains an ongoing story that still affects patients and professionals. A story whose narratives are shaped by memory, events, and the legal counsel. These events fundamentally changed how we practice medicine, and being a doctor now is very different to the 1980s. We've learnt many lessons, and the bitter pills are, you could say, sugar-coated now. But medical crises recur, and COVID-19 has sharpened the need to produce this series. It has also inevitably focused some of my commentary. But I believe that the lessons from this period go beyond COVID to the essence of medicine, that it is fallible. The stories we tell ourselves when things go wrong and what it does to us as individuals and as a profession. We swallow the bitter pill in order that we may continue to learn. I hope you enjoy the podcasts and do stay tuned in for more episodes of The Bitter Pill.